I talked a little bit about finishing cured polymer clay by sanding it, either to get it into the shape that you want or to sand off edges, various things like that. So I'll demonstrate sanding on this bead that I did. One of the things that's important is that polymer clay needs to be sanded wet. You don't want the dust from the polymer clay. You don't want to be inhaling the dust from polymer clay because of the possible carcinogens that are in it. So always sand your polymer clay wet. And polymer clay loves being sanded wet. So for this piece, remember I did it on a curve. I baked it on a curve. And then I want to be able to run either a chain or a leather cord or something through this. So I needed to fill the bead to give it some structure. So I filled it, and I did a pretty decent job of trimming off the scrap clay. Remember my scrap clay? This is all the clay that I didn't use out of the three colors all mixed together. So I filled it with scrap clay and baked it, and now I need to sand this down perfectly flat and sand the sides perfectly flat so that when I put the white backing on it, it's going to come out really nice. If I would put the white backing on it now, all of these sections would show through, and that's not what I want because that's not a nicely finished piece. So I did do the acrylic paint on this, so I'm going to need to be careful not to get a whole lot of water on that. It should be perfect, but you never know. So I've got a little thing of water. I just used plain water. One of the artists, he actually puts a little bit of dish detergent in with the water, but I don't have that available right now. So this is, I can't remember what grit. This is really rough sandpaper. I'm not looking for a nice finish. What I'm looking for is to get this flattened out pretty quickly. So I'll look up what this is, 3M something or other. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it flat, and I'm just going to start going around in circles. And by doing this, I know I'm getting a flat bottom. So you see the clay that's coming off. And I'm going around in circles as a way to keep it going pretty flat. See how it's starting to flatten out? I see I've still got a little bit of a dent there, so let me rinse this. But I'm almost to the edge of this bead. I've got a little bit more space here, so I may end up having to fill that in because I don't want to take any of the bead off. So I'm going to do add a little more pressure up here. Okay, so that's about it, but I've got a nice, really flat bottom here now. You might be wondering why I sectioned this off and made this, and that's because when I put a backing on here, I'm going to have a pretty nice wide hole for any kind of chain or cord to go through. So that's why I did that. And basically I just rolled up my scrap clay and I cut it to various lengths. I coated my baked clay with some liquid polymer clay so that the fresh clay, the uncured clay, would stick to the cured clay. And then I used, where is it? I used this tool. You can use a knitting needle, you can use a pencil, you can use anything, a wooden dowel, and I pressed it in there to make sure that I would get a wide enough hole for any kind of cord that I'm thinking I'm going to put through here, whether it's thin or thick or whatever. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I need to sand down these sides a little bit. This one is straighter and that one's going a little more in. I won't have to do much, and so I might just do this kind of eyeballing it. Because I don't want to take too much of the bead off. Got a little bit sticking up there. And I am going to have to fill these in. I didn't notice when I was putting it all together that I needed to put some more clay in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. This looks pretty good. So I think I've got that set. So now I'm going to get rid of the water. I take my rag and I'm going to clean it off, dry it off, make sure it's really dry. Okay, that looks good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I want to back this in white. I think white will give it a nice look. And I'll bring the white up around the edge. This will be like that. Or do I want to do the blue? Let me see. Take a piece of scrap. No, I think I'm going to do the white. All right. So this white is rolled out on a number 2, and for the back, actually, yeah, that'll work. So what I'm going to do so I can cut the shape right is I'm just going to press this in to the clay and get a bit of an impression. Well, that didn't work very well. All right. Then I'm going to take a little stylus and go around. That's better. And then I'm going to cut it. Okay, now this is cured clay, and in order to get uncured clay to stick to cured clay, you need to put some liquid Sculpey or some Bacon Bond or something like that on here. And so what I do, I'm going to need to fill in some holes here, so I've got some pretty thick bacon bond here that I can put on here. Usually it's much more liquid than this, but I want to make sure that I get this filled in. And the reason why is because you don't want any air pockets in your filled bead, or that will affect the final look. So I'm going to start spreading this with my fingers. Man, this is really thickened up. I need to use some clay softener to maybe have it not be so thick. I want to make sure that I don't get this stuff on the front of the bead. And oftentimes it doesn't need to be this thick, just as long as you're coating the whole surface that you're going to connect raw clay to, you are fine. I've got that hole filled. This one needs just a little more, and I know you can't see very well. And I want to make sure that I don't get it on the front of my bead, because it would cure as shiny, and I don't want that yet. So what I'm going to do is take this piece, lay it on here, and with the liquid polymer clay you can move it around a little bit so that it's matched up. Make sure that you're pressing it down well, not in the place where the cord is going to go, but press it down to the clay. And then I'm going to cure that, and then I'm going to come back and put a thinner slice of clay around here to frame it in. But I'm going to go ahead and bake this like that. That looks good. So remember when I was talking about sculpting, or if you had any curved beads that you would need to support the shape of the beads while it cured so that they wouldn't flatten out. I doubt this is going to flatten out because I've got this cured piece of clay, but I'm not going to take any chances. So what I'm going to do is, this is a smaller Pyrex dish that I've got cornstarch in. I'm just going to lay it in here and sort of rock it in there so that it's well supported. And then I will cover this with my thin cardboard and bake it again at 275, since this is Primo, 275 for 30 minutes, and then bring it out again. And the nice thing about once you've done your initial cure, if you've done it right, and as long as you protect your pieces, you can keep curing pieces. So I cured the blue piece, then I put the scrap clay in, I cured that, now I'm putting a backing on, I'm going to cure that, then I'm going to put the last frame layer on, and I'm going to cure that. And so as long as I'm keeping my temperature consistent and I am protecting the bead, I'm not going to burn the bead by curing it that many times.